Alright, we're going to add one more API endpoint for managing statuses of the features. Let's name it move features. Changing request statuses. Via that API endpoint, the user with their role admin will be possible to move the features from one status to another. So we are choosing the ID for reading and status fields for writing, both development status and request status. Alright. Okay, saving and going to web pages section, features management, and actions tab. In cars component settings, we're creating new action, approve. That will be button with some icon and button type accent. Include into the drop-down menu, and we are choosing the API endpoint through which we will save objects. We just have created it. Then we should pick the ID, but there is no ID available for writing. We have forgotten to add it. Let's fix fields available for writing ID. Alright. And coming back to action settings, choosing the ID field equals to ID of an object from the card. If we don't choose ID for writing, we will create new object instead of editing the existing one, and request status will be constant approved. Right? And another action, decline feature. And we have forgotten to add development status. Let it be planned at once by clicking the action button. And the action decline would be the form plus button. It means that I'm going to add some reason of declining. Okay, we are choosing the API endpoint, but we don't have the field reason of declining, so we are going to data structure configuration. We are adding new field, decline reason, type of string. Alright. Then we are going to API endpoint. First of all, I would love to display that field on the card, and I would love to write that field from an action. Right? Go into actions, decline, then we pick that field for writing from a form, and then automatic fields mapping as usual. ID equals to ID of an object from the card, and the request status declined. Alright, let's have a look. There are two actions, two buttons, and I would love to organize it in the separate tab on the card. Let's name it request management, and the first tab would be just information. I'm dragging actions to the new tab. Yeah, this way. Let's have a look. Alright, we have two tabs, one with information and the other with actions. Let's click on the action, approve, and we see the feature vanished. Okay, then we should create new endpoint, several new endpoints for the other tabs. For declined features, for approved features, for list features. So we are copying their configured API endpoint, just changing their name and the filters. Here the request status should be approved, right? And then we are going to web pages section, feature management page, and configuring the cards, choosing the new API endpoint. Alright, configuring the cards view. There should be tags and development status on the card. And we are editing the order of fields on the card. I would love to see type on the top, title, description, and the inner ID. Right? And at once, let's add some actions. I would love to have an opportunity to put their feature back to backlog from approved to suggested. I'm picking the matching icon, then choosing the same API endpoint as we have chosen for another actions, move features. Then I'm setting up the ID mapping as usual for editing an object. Then development status and the request status is set. The development status would be blank and the request status would be new. Then I'm setting up the card color. All right. Now I would love to hide the quick search on the first tab as well. Okay. It seems to be working. Yep. Next, I would love to set up the other tabs, released and declined. As usual, I'm copying their endpoint for declined features. That allows me to set up the endpoint faster. I'm changing the filter. The request status should be declined. Then we're going to web pages, features management, the third tab on the page, the fourth tab on the page. Declined features, then turning off the quick search at once, setting up the card view. And here on the card I would love to show the reason of declining. And as usual, the card color, border, and setting up the order of the fields, inner ID, type, description, and title at the very top. Alright, here we are declining. The reason I just don't like the feature. And I see that is the declined reason and the card. Alright. Next, we are adding actions to the declined list. I would love to have an option to put back the feature from the list of declined features. Probably I've done it by mistake. So I'm setting up the automatic mapping of ID, the usual thing for editing object. Then declined reason should be blank and request status should be new after performing that action. Yeah, we see it here. The reason is blank and the status is correct. Alright. Let's create one more feature For example, the third feature, bug text with some tags. Here it appeared in suggested features. I would love to add some actions to the list of approved features. We have one for putting back to backlog, and now I'm setting up another one for changing the development status. We are choosing for development from approved. That is a kind of a current development pipeline. I'm setting up the usual thing for ID, and I'm changing development status. That would be constant under development. Okay. But moreover, that action should be visible for features with particular statuses. So I should configure the conditionals on actions. For example, I have chosen for development, and I don't want to see those actions for the feature under development. So I'm choosing the condition that object field development status should equal planned. Alright, let's see. Okay, there is no such an action. And we should do the similar thing with the action back to backlog. The development status should equal planned. Alright. The actions vanished. And now we are adding one more action for features under development. For example, removing from the list under development. That would be a button with a certain icon, the type, including it in a drop-down menu, choosing the same API endpoint, setting up the usual thing for ID for editing an object. And editing development status to planned back. And of course, we should add a conditional that the development status should be under development for showing that action. Let's have a look. Okay, I see it. Remove from under development. We see the status have changed. Alright, it works. A little trifle, I want to change an icon for putting back to backlog. Okay. That part of workflow works well. And I need one more action for releasing features which are under development. Let it be a rocket, accent type. And we are performing the familiar actions. Setting up ID, then setting up status, development status, released, and the conditional. That action should be visible for features under development only. Alright, let's release the feature. Released. And I see we should add one more condition in the filter for our endpoint to hide features which are released. So the development status should not be equal released. Alright. Okay. Let's check the whole workflow. back to backlog, declined, released. And the last tab that we should configure is released features. As usual, we are copying the endpoint. That is quicker to copy the endpoint when the list of fields for reading and writing is the same. Setting up the filters, we should have the filter development status equals released. Okay. There are no objects released. Let's have a look at the tab. We haven't configured it yet, so we are configuring it. At once turning off the quick search, setting up the card view, tags, color, and the order of the fields, inner ID, type, title, and description at the top. And I don't want to see request status because it was released and request status is apparently approved. Alright, that is released features. So we have completed the whole workflow